Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Self Publishing Tips and Tricks Show, a series designed to give you insight into the world of self publishing and marketing your books. I'm Morgan Lee, and I'm here with my co hosts.
I'm Shannon.
I'm Ben.
And today we are here with Richard Holliday. We're going to ask him questions about his self publishing journey and how he markets his books. But before we jump into that, do you all have any news or any points of interest that you like to discuss first?
So my news is tomorrow. Of course, this will be after the recording comes out, but tomorrow my book comes out, Soul of a Rose. So by the time this recording launches, then we will. I will now have 2 books out. I'll have Blood of the Lily and Soul of a Rose, and I am working on rewriting parts of book 3, Tears of the Marigold. So I'm hoping to pretty much be close to being done because I had to give a few chapters to my critique partner, Morgan.
Yeah.
So
Great. And as for me, nothing too out of the norm. This will be coming out in early February, I believe. So I post new videos on YouTube every Monday night, so please check those out. Hopefully, by the time this video comes out, I'll have gotten my debut novel manuscript back from the professional editor, and I can also send my manuscript over to Morgan Lee. So it's going to be a busy month for you.
So Morgan is hired. You hired her as an editor. Is that what you?
Not yet, but yes, that is the plan.
That is the plan. Okay, well that's great news for you, Morgan.
So I'm so excited. I've had a bunch of people reach out so far. So
great, awesome.
My news is in February I'll be doing, well, not really a series, but all of my videos coming out on Wednesdays and Fridays will be kind of centered around Black History Month. So they'll tie into Black History Month. So look forward to that.
Yeah.
Great.
I look forward to that series too.
All right. So now let's talk about our guest author today. Richard Holliday is a thriller and sci-fi author from London. He holds a degree in creative writing from Kingston University. His work includes the horror novella Nightmare Tenant and Foundations, both published in 2011. His modus operandi is to make the mundane we are all familiar with in everyday life into the macabre through his stories. In addition to these 2 works, his short story, The Landlady, inspired by his favorite authors, James Herbert, is available, as well as Oranges and Lemons, an alternate history psychological thriller that marked his start in self-publishing in 2013. He is currently preparing to start the query process on The Thaw, a post-apocalyptic sci-fi adventure novel, and is preparing to launch a new series to self-publish in 2022. Subscribe to his monthly newsletter for updates on that. And we say welcome to Richard.
Welcome.
Would you please take a moment to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Thanks, Morgan. Yeah, that was a really good introduction. You make me sound a lot better at everything than I actually am. In case we didn't, I think we covered most of it in that really good introduction. I'm Richard Holliday. I'm the author of Nightmare Tenant. There it is. Very proud of that one. I'm sort of like a thriller and science fiction author from London. And I've just kind of really started going on that self-publishing journey in earnest in 2021, which is exciting.
Awesome. I'll be excited to see what you come out with this year. Before we get into the questions about your work, could you tell us what got you into writing?
What got me into writing? That's a good question. I think it all starts from when I was very young. I used to write stories, and I think the writing for me is me finally finding some kind of like artistic output for my kind of, what I like to do. Because I'm not a performer, as I'm sure this podcast will show. So I wrote stories from a young age. And in 2010, I remember I sat down and thought, I'm going to do this, take it, do it properly, so to speak. So I did NaNoWriMo that year. And I suppose the rest is history.
Well, I think that sounds like a good plan there. But so what does your typical writing life look like? Do you plan to set for do you have a set period of time to write for every day, or is weekly goals, monthly goals? What do you do?
I suppose I'm the classic sort of procrastinator. I come from like the Russell T Davies, Doctor Who kind of thing, where I have a deadline and I will think about it until it's like the 11th hour and be like, I should probably do something about that. I don't really have like a writing routine. It kind of comes in spits and spurts, really. But I try to set like a weekly goal, a yearly goal. Actually, yearly goals, I'm a bit, I'd set monthly goals because things, I think, especially with the, start of the year, it's easy to say, oh, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And what happens in January? Well, life happens. So I try to take it a bit more kind of realistically, so to speak. So I set weekly, monthly, maybe quarterly goals at best. And then, whatever life decides to throw at me, I can kind of, adapt my plans accordingly. I think the kind of quote I go by is, your plan never survives first contact with the enemy. So we have to be prepared to adapt that.
Yeah. So you might be like a productive procrastinator, which I think Morgan said in one of her videos.
Yes.
I think I might be. I need to look into that more because that almost sounds like an oxymoron in a way.
Yeah.
Productive, thinking that's an excuse, but no, I think it does get done in the end, but it's not like I'm not like the sort of Stephen King get up at 6 a.m. and write 2,000 words before breakfast. I mean, if only.
What is your writing process like for you? How do you approach your overall story structure?
So I used to be very much a pantser. I used to write by the seat of my pants, or as we call them in the UK, trousers. But as I've kind of gone on, it's just I've really come along to the kind of plotting. I've been like a plotting, born again plotter, shall we say. My first sort of story was a pants novel that I did in 2010, and it is an absolute mess. I've looked at it, I think it's a good story, but there is no saving this one. So with every project that I do, I learn a bit more. So outline has become a skill I've kind of really thrown myself into. Started off with like just going by literally beginning, middle, and end. Fill it up, this blank sheet of paper. But now I've kind of come around to story beats. I use the 5 commandments of story because Kent Shawn has drummed that into me in a big way. His persistence has really kind of paid off because it's made my writing process just so much kind of faster and more kind of like productive. I wrote Nightmare Tenant in 6 months, which considering, the previous kind of iterations of myself, that would have been like a pipe dream, but I managed to do it, and I'm really kind of infused by that kind of productivity I managed to get for that. So always making it better.
Awesome. So when you're either plotting, since you're a plotter now, what comes first for you? Do you plan out the characters, the plot, the scenes? Like what comes first when you're outlining, I guess?
So the first thing that usually comes to me is like the premise of the story, the what if ... or the in a world where ... That's what you start with. So usually the plot or the premise comes first. I've always kind of seen my characterization in my kind of work as my potentially weakest aspect, but as I go forward, I'm trying to make characters less incidental, so the plot doesn't just happen to them and they get taken along for the ride, whatever happens. I'm trying to make them more active and give them more agency and influence in the plot, which is kind of interesting. It's been really good skill to learn. So it's been a bit of a culture shock for me because I'm very much a genre writer. I'm, very much a genre evangelist, shall we say. I've always believed that plot is king, so you've got to have a plot there. Something's got to happen. It's very important that things happen in books, otherwise I'm not going to read it. And characters have always been kind of like a vehicle for the plot, but I'm kind of just getting better at making them less incidental and more active. So that's really good, and it's made better stories, funnily enough.
So in some communication that we've had, you've talked about your workflow as a tool. So I'm curious, what is your best or most valuable tool for your workflow? Can't talk today.
That's fine. So with my kind of workflow, I'm very much into having a bottleneck-free workflow and making it just work simple as possible. So like the whole kind of idea of writing by hand in notebooks is a very romantic idea of writing, but for me that's pretty disastrous because put a notebook down, where's it gone, where's that idea gone? I need everything at my fingertips. So it's got to be there, it's got to be accessible. So those kind of like sitting in the coffee shop with my turtleneck and my tiny little coffee doesn't work for me. It's kind of like what we all think writing is, but if I wrote like that, nothing would work for me. So I've kind of converted pretty fully to a full-on kind of digital workflow that's accessible from anywhere. So I could be here in my office, in the library with my laptop, and it's all there. So in terms of what I actually do, for outlining and planning, I use Excel quite productively and happily. Do love me a good spreadsheet. I also use like OneNote to just have like an idea notebook that I can access anywhere. It can be on my phone, it can be on my iPad, it can be on my laptop, whatever. That's good for organising ideas, just that kind of fly in. I use Scrivener for my drafting quite heavily. I get quite into that because that's a very good tool for like non-linear jumping around. And then I kind of finish it all off, do my editing and revision in Word, because that is the industry standard. And if I want to kind of go into traditional publishing, which I'm not ruling out, we'll probably talk about that later, Word is the industry standard, and you've got to get with the program a little bit. I think it's important if you want to get good results. You kind of get what you pay for. If you I think it's the old term, garbage in, garbage out. So I always kind of think it's worth investing in these kind of tools so you can make the best of it. So yeah.
Cool. You mentioned a whole bunch of tools that obviously weren't around 10 years ago, but how has your workflow changed from those earlier writing experiences?
I think my early experience was just doing it in like sort of Word or even like an early version of Scrivener, and I just learned so much in terms of structuring the project. And my kind of like thoughts are, it's just easy to spend a bit of time before you start a draft, setting out your kind of templates, because it will make the drafting process so much easier and faster. You won't be like thinking, oh, halfway through I need to organise this, this, and this. You can just kind of do it. It's ready. But yeah, no, I think my workflow is always evolving with whatever new tools come in, and it just makes me better. I take things that other people do, see if I can adapt them to how I work, and just it's kind of like a sort of evolution, not a revolution. So it's always kind of changing up a little bit. But yeah, I think as time has gone on from when I started 10 years ago, a lot of these tools were there in early forms, but I've just become aware of them, and they've obviously got better as time goes on. So it's really good.
So moving on from writing into publishing, how did you finally land on self-publishing, and why did you choose it in not traditional publishing?
So self-publishing, I think, in certainly the last few years has become really, really accessible. I mean, really accessible, and that's really good. So anyone, I think, with self-publishing, there's a big kind of almost stigma or preconception that you end up with like a garage full of books that you have to go and sell. It's not like that at all anymore. So in terms of why I chose self-publishing for a lot of what I'm doing, it's just time to get books out. So with Nightmare Tenant, I got that written, edited, and I published it in about 6 months, which for a 40,000 word novella, I don't think is bad at all, all said and done. While I would like to sort of pursue traditional publishing with some books in the future, it just takes a lot of time, sometimes like multiple years with one book. And I want to be putting out work a lot more kind of prolifically and building up a backlist, which I think is very important too, like a catalogue of my work.
So what was one misconception you had about self-publishing before you published your work?
I think there is a common misconception with self-publishing that you can just write a book and copy it from Word straight into Amazon and it's going to sell. That's not the case at all. If anything, you need to treat self-publishing with the professionalism that you would do with a traditionally published book, and possibly even more so because you're not going to have that team to do it for you. You're going to have to do basically all of the work yourself. So sort of self-published authors, they need to kind of think not just about the book, but also pay attention to the editorial stage, the design phase, because I think the readers will expect the book, no matter if it's self-published or not, to meet a certain standard. And if you either don't meet that standard, or you kind of play against the kind of standards that are there, it'll kind of flag your book up as this one's been self-published, and it's going to hit that kind of stigma in a way which is not deserved, really.
What has been your greatest self-publishing success thus far?
My greatest self-publishing success, definitely Nightmare Tenant, because I got it out quick, and it's possibly been the most successful of my books because of the number of reviews, the number of downloads, and I was really pleased with my end of year stats for that book. Considering with the kind of marketing I did do, I was a bit kind of conservative about it. With experimenting with what marketing I did do. And so the reaction's been really good, really kind of encouraging, and I'm looking forward to building on that kind of success and the lessons learned in a big way this year.
So what has been your least favorite part to this publishing journey?
My least favourite part is easy, it's marketing. I consider marketing a big dark art. I enjoy the writing process, I enjoy the editing process, I even enjoy like the design process of putting the book together. These are all skills I think every self-published author needs to have some kind of fundamental knowledge of. But yeah, marketing is very, you kind of have to go where the wind's blowing a little bit. It's not quite as scientific as maybe people think, because people think, I'll just put an ad out, this will happen, that will happen, but there's so many kind of variables. So that's possibly my least enjoyable part of self-publishing, because it's so unpredictable in a way. You kind of rely on people at the end of the day, and it's not quite as definite, shall we say.
I don't think marketing is too many favorite parts to anybody, to too many people. Very few people like the marketing aspect. So I kind of agree with you on that one. I don't really enjoy the marketing as much, but it has to be done if you're a self-published author. Even I guess traditionally published authors probably pursue some marketing as well. But if you could pass on one thing to aspiring self-published authors, what's your best publishing tip or trick?
So I thought long and hard about this one. The one tip I would say, and that is you need to make your books inside and out look like a traditionally published book. And there's no room in self-publishing for being an iconoclast. You can't say Yahoo snubs to the rules, because you don't want to go by the rules. So this is what the reading public expect. They expect certain things from a book. They expect it to be well edited, well written. They expect certain things you might consider just small things, like they expect it to be a certain size, they expect it to have a certain, even like a certain font, paper color, stuff like that. And these are things I think with self-publishing, you can really kind of set your book apart if you kind of either miss these things or decide to go against them, whether intentional or not. The last thing we want is for books to look self-published, because that has that kind of unfair stigma, because I think years ago self-published books had a bit of a bad rap. That's kind of largely gone away, but not completely. So, my top tip for one self-published author is to just go to a bookshop or pick a book off your shelf that you bought in a bookshop or got anywhere or you've read, and just look at how they've done it if you need any sort of hints and tips. I've literally had with my books, I've made all these mistakes myself. I just went with this, random size or whatever. I thought, well, this looks good, but not actually looked at an actual book. So I've literally had books off my shelf with a ruler, looking in like, oh, is that the right size? Yeah. So yeah, that is kind of, something I would pass on to any self-published author who might not think, you might think this is needless, faffing over things that don't matter, but it's the attention to detail that I think is a key thing that you need to kind of grab onto.
Going in the opposite direction then, are there, if you're comfortable with it, are there any missteps with publishing or anything that you would have liked to have done differently?
Not with my most recent book, so Nightmare Tenant. I think I kind of ticked all my my internal list off when I was getting that ready. I sort of, I don't want to say I indulged myself with this sort of design process of it, but I kind of went full in. I treated it like it was a traditionally published book. So I commissioned a cover for it, which I think was another thing that self-published authors need to kind of think about, is the cover. We all say we don't judge a book by its cover. Actually, we do, whether we like it or not. Books are judged by their covers. So, I commissioned a cover from a pretty well-known designer that another self-published author recommended to me, which is good, build on that community aspect. But yeah, you've really got to research your genre as well and see what other books in that genre look like, how yours is going to fit in on the sort of shelf, so to speak, and then go with that. But yeah, and also I think you need to know where your kind of skill set ends, and you need to get help, because I've done mine. I think an early book I did the cover myself. Try as I might, I'm not quite the Photoshop whiz I think I am. So yeah, I'm definitely glad it's money well spent for the cover. So stuff like that is definitely worth investing in, shall we say. I think you have to kind of put some money behind it if you want it to be a complete success.
I completely agree with that, especially as somebody who did the wrong thing before. And so I agree on the self-publishing thing. Make sure that you get that professional cover coming from somebody who tried to do it herself. Would you ever consider traditionally publishing? Why or why not?
Yes, absolutely. I'm not going to rule it out at all. I think both avenues, both traditional and self-publishing, they're both worth pursuing. I'm not going to say no to either of them. I think there's a latent perception of traditional publishing being the proper publishing method. Over the last few years, that perception has broken down as I think self-published books have become better quality, because they're taken kind of more seriously, both by their authors and by the readers. So, yeah. If we look at books like The Martian by Andy Weir, that started as a self-published book, and it got picked up, and it's been wildly successful. That's definitely something to look at. Even books like, I hate to admit I've read this one, 50 Shades of Grey, started off as Twilight fan fiction, and look at the phenomenon that became, for better or worse. So I'm not afraid of taking books I want to query. So say the querying process doesn't work out, for whatever reason, I'd self-publish it. I think they're not mutually exclusive for a book. So, a book can be self-published and then picked up. Happy days. And the same if you're querying a book and you don't feel like it's going anywhere, you can just think, you know what, I'll publish it myself if you feel confident in it. So, yeah, and I also think self-publishing is a really good way of establishing that backlist and that sort of back catalogue. So when you go to an agent, you say, oh, I've got all these books, they've sold X amount. It's kind of something to say, and say you are a bit of a serious writer in a way.
I always say it's an interesting question, if someone would consider traditionally publishing when they self-publish, because I know for me, it's not a route I'm going to go down. But I think I'd be like you in that if it sought me out, like, hey, we like to, take your book you've already published and work with it, then I think, okay, sure. But I don't particularly like the idea of having to query again. So for self-published authors, when they hit that button to self-publish their work for the first time, what advice would you have for them?
I would say to them, it is a long-term thing you're getting into, and don't just think you can click publish and then boom, done, sit back and wait for the royalties to kind of pour in. Doesn't happen like that. You have to kind of put the work in. You can't just sort of click publish and assume it's going to sell itself. You have to, as a self-published author, you have to kind of switch from the writer hat to the marketer hat. And so writing the book's the first phase of the journey, and you have to be prepared to support your books on an ongoing basis. So don't just think you can do a little bit of marketing for the first week, month, quarter, or whatever. You have to keep generating those leads by constantly pushing your work out there. Hopefully you'll get some natural leads as it kind of takes off a little bit, but you have to kind of be prepared to kind of put that work in on a fairly kind of like long-term scale.
Well, you shifted topics perfectly. What marketing do you typically do for your various novels?
So let's take my book Nightmare Tenant as an example, as it's my most recent kind of thing. I kind of treated this very much as a test project for Facebook ads, etc. I've not really looked into Facebook ads yet, but I'm definitely encouraged by Shannon's videos about it, which are very sort of demystifying about the whole Amazon ads thing. So my ads for Nightmare Tenant were mainly to grow my newsletter. My thoughts on that are that social media, like my Facebook page, my Twitter page, I use that, and my Instagram page, they are like hotels that you are renting the space on. It's not 100% your space. You're kind of at their whim and mercy. So the newsletter, because it's wholly mine, I can design it, I can lay it out how I like, and it can go straight to customers. You don't have to kind of hope that the algorithm picks you up. So yeah, I've been kind of focusing on that mostly. So when Nightmare Tenant launched, I did a launch giveaway, which was a lot of fun. I asked people to enter my giveaway through an email address, send in proof of purchase, and they get entered into a draw. You know, us Brits love our draws. You know, I'd be wonderful at any kind of village fete. So my advice for that is make sure you're not asking for people to review in exchange for entry in your contest or whatever. Because I wanted to go for proof of purchase over, like, please send proof of your review, because I didn't want any potential for Amazon to link that to me in regards to any impropriety with reviews, because it's not worth getting banned from Amazon for that, because I know they come down quite hot on the whole review thing. But yeah, that was good fun. I got enough entries in that to make it worth doing. Yeah, I want to do that again in the future. And, it's just nice to kind of get people engaged with that.
What did you give away? I don't know if you said that, if I missed it, maybe.
So I gave away 2 signed paperbacks, which was fun, and I gave away 5 signed prints of the cover, like the poster behind me, which was fun.
Nice.
So what is the best money that you've spent on marketing?
So I've not spent a great deal on ads yet, mainly because Nightmare Tenant was a test project, so I didn't want to kind of put a lot of money into it initially for it to go nowhere. So I think for my ads, I did 4 runs of a week of ads, spent about £20 per run just to kind of see what the reaction would be like, and just kind of test out a couple of ad templates. I did that about 4 times in 2021, so that was worth doing because it did grow my newsletter list, which was really good. I shifted nearly 300 copies of my reader magnet, which is the prequel to Nightmare Tenant Foundations, and yeah, and even the giveaway, I managed to get nearly 500 downloads on it, which I thought was really impressive because I didn't put a massive spend behind it. So yeah, I was kind of pleasantly surprised. I will say that some of the ads I did were less successful than the others, so that's why I didn't put much in. So you can kind of learn from that without putting a big kind of commitment in, because there's nothing worse than thinking, I spent £200 on that ad and I didn't get anything. So yeah, kind of baby steps using it as a test, but I feel a lot more confident now.
I would be curious, when you said you did Facebook ads, you said?
Mm-hmm.
And did you do, like, how did you target your audience? I know this is not a question that we gave to you ahead of time, but I thought of it and I was kind of curious.
So my audience targeting was kind of fairly broad. I kind of went for the UK. I think it was 18 to 65 years old, and then I just put a load of kind of things like fiction books, mystery, Stephen King, some other sort of stuff. So I had a kind of broad audience, just focused on the UK. And yeah, I was kind of impressed with that because I didn't want to go too specific. I wanted to sort of see how a fairly broad audience to what's kind of local to me would work out, and I was quite pleased with the results. So yeah,
okay,
that's how I picked it.
Awesome. And then you talked about you spent £200 on some marketing that did not work.
I nearly spent.
Oh, you nearly. Gotcha. Okay,
I didn't want to spend £200 on marketing that didn't work, which is why I did the 4 lots of 20 quid.
Oh, okay.
Dipped my toe a little bit into that and didn't get it bitten off, so I thought that was prudent than putting a lot of money down into it.
Right, not lose that money.
Yeah.
So what marketing have you tried that you would never do again?
There's not actually been any marketing that I've done that I wouldn't do again, but there is something that I've been approached with that I wasn't interested in. A few times on Instagram, I was approached by what seemed like fairly sketchy accounts offering review services. I remember with one of them, I got into quite a conversation, and they weren't particularly professional, I didn't think, because it took me quite a while to get out that you can do a review for me. Okay? And I said, oh, it's going to cost you though. I'm like, okay, do you want to tell me how much it's going to cost me? And then they said, oh, it's going to cost X amount of money. I wouldn't ever pay for a review. I have sent ebooks to book accounts on Instagram for free. I see that as a bit of a loss leader, get the exposure. It's at the price of an ebook, that's fine. It's nice to see that happening, get some reviews on that. I am certainly looking at in the future sites like Readsy and NetGalley where you pay not for a review but access to reviewers, but yeah, I kind of drew the line at paying like an individual random account on Instagram any money. I just thought it's not very safe and it's not very kind of like professional, shall we say. Nice as some of these accounts were, I just thought this seems a little bit sketchy and I'm not interested in that.
I haven't had any Instagram accounts come in and approach me like that they did for you, but I've had a ton of emails. Same thing, that they offer to review my book for money, and I thought, no, not going to do that.
Yeah, no, it doesn't appeal to me at all. It just doesn't feel like the proper way of getting a review. I want my reviews to be very much, people have come to it and they haven't been paid for it, because I don't want people to shill for me. I don't think that's right. I draw the line there.
How often do you go back and promote pre-existing works, or do you do something on, say, an annual basis when it was published?
Yeah, I've done birthday events for Nightmare Tonight. I did like a sort of half birthday thing where I did it free on Kindle for 5 days, because they only give you 5 days. Wish they'd give you 7, that would be nicer. That was really good. I didn't do any promotional material over the Christmas holiday because Hannah Palmer, who's another author, who is a self-published author, and she's very good. Her marketing is really good. She advised me and said, it's going to be a bidding war for attention at Christmas. You're going to be fighting a bit of a losing battle for people's attention. So I didn't do that. But I do think it's important, especially as I go on with my kind of self-publishing career, to keep kind of some residual marketing for the older titles. Don't just sort of forget about them once they no longer are flavour of the month. So yeah, I was quite pleased with the half birthday thing. I'm already planning what to do for the Nightmare Tenant first birthday at the end of March. It's going to be very exciting. And yeah, I just kind of, take it on like a bit of an ad hoc basis. I mean, the giveaway I did at the half birthday towards the end of, was it October or September? Doesn't matter when it was really good because the novel went for free for 5 days. It got to #1 in free horror suspense on Amazon, which was really fantastic. Got nearly 500 downloads, which was nice to see. I'm not quite sure whether that was down to my Facebook ad that I had running at the same time, or because I got highly ranked and it kind of got picked up by the Amazon algorithm, but still very pleased with the results.
Nice. So we know that there's a lot of marketing advice and resources out there. So how do you pinpoint like which one is going to work for you? How do you funnel it down to what's necessary, I guess, for you?
That's a very good question. There is a lot of kind of marketing tips, so we're keeping all the good ones here. I just try to find the ones that work best for me in terms of slotting them into my workflow, because as I said before, it's an evolution, not a revolution with me. I just kind of tweak it with every project. I don't want to start from scratch. So just find what works for me and what I can kind of adapt to in a kind of minor sense, and then take it from there. But yeah, I don't rule anything out. It's silly to kind of be a bit of a stick in the mud and think this way is the best, it's my way or the highway. No, I'm always open to ideas. And I just talk to people. Sometimes you talk to other writers and you can kind of absorb their ideas and their knowledge. So yeah, that's my kind of philosophy on it.
That's a good idea, because when you said you talked to your friend about the marketing she did, I was like, oh, I want to talk to your friend.
You should.
So if you could only pass on one thing to aspiring self-published authors, what's your best marketing tip or trick?
My best marketing tip or trick is don't discount the power of a newsletter. As many people who have kind of followed my journey in 2021 will know, I am a big advocate of my newsletter. Because I think for a long time before that, even like in 2020, I was like, who uses email anymore? Belongs in the museum, who does that anymore? No, the newsletter is so powerful because you can get straight to people. And you can build a relationship with these people. You try to encourage them to reply to you, and it becomes a bit of a transactional thing, which is really nice. You can set up an author website before you've even got any books out and start building up that brand recognition. So yeah, I definitely think newsletters have kind of come full circle a little bit. I'm subscribed to so many now, and they're so lovely to see. So yeah, don't discount, don't think, emails are for old people. Not so. So yeah, that's my one big tip is, if you want to be marketing, get directly to people's inboxes through your newsletter.
That is a great tip and something I need to definitely work on building. In
Yes.
terms of, sorry, in terms of your own timing and schedule for the week or for a month or however long you go, how much time do you actually spend writing versus doing other authorial tasks like managing feedback from beta readers or marketing in general?
I'm really glad you asked that question, Ben, because it is a classic case for me of not enough hours in the day. So I think you're going to do like a series about talking about being an author, working full time, because there's a lot of plates to spin when you're kind of got other commitments, you know, life commitments. So yeah, I'm kind of really wary of overcommitting. So I've become quite picky about who I beta read and art for. Not out of personal things. I just say I want to be able to commit to you to help you out, but I don't want to sort of say I'm going to do 500 things and not be able to do any of it, because I've had it before where I've done back-to-back beta reads, busy periods at work, you know, trying to do stuff at home as well. And it's just exhausting. So I wouldn't recommend doing back-to-back betas because I need my leisure reading as well. You need to kind of have a palate cleanser between them as well. So yeah, and I also think it's really good to be getting on top of your time management during the week and know what it is you need to do and kind of when. So yeah, it's kind of hard to spin those plates at times and get everything you want to do, and also have that kind of chill out, do nothing time, because that's important too. You know, I'm not a robot, despite people's you know, assertions. I am not robotic, and I just need to have some, you know, couch time too, shall we say? So yeah, it's kind of just finding a way of spinning all those plates at the same time.
All right, so moving on to talking a little bit about you and your books or your stories. I'm curious about the break that you took between the short story Oranges and Lemons, which came out in 2012, and The Landlady, which came out in 2020. So can you tell us a little bit about the break in between there?
So that was kind of like a very interesting sort of period for me. So Oranges and Lemons was a short story I wrote, again, as you said, in 2013, which was good fun. And then I did a degree in creative writing in 2015. I graduated in 2018. And The Landlady was my end of year project. So I think it actually came out in 2018. I don't even know the dates of my own stuff anymore. What's going on? So Oranges and Lemons was an early project. So I think at that time I was quite naive about what self-publishing would entail. I think I was very much in the or just write a book and shove it on Amazon kind of mindset. We all know how that ended up. So even during that time between the two projects, I was putting short stories on my website. It's still on my website. Good heavens. I keep them as kind of like a log of my author journey, he says. But yeah, The Landlady, it was my final year project at university. And I just thought it'd be nice to kind of do that. Actually, it started off as a one-off. Did it as a one-off for a friend. Picture went on Facebook. Oh, where can I buy your book, Richard? And demand was there, so you know, got to satisfy that demand. So yeah, that's where I took it from there. So I'm glad I took the time between to kind of examine how to really do it properly on Amazon. And I'm really glad I took the time in between to study my craft at university. And every day's a school day, so I'm always learning something new.
So I think that's interesting too, that your first couple of published works were short stories, and then you moved into the longer format of a novel. Can you tell us like what about your decision of changing into that longer format, and why did you start with short stories? And there's a lot of questions I have right here.
So actually, so it was always my intention to write novels. So what you might not be aware of is there was a novel before Oranges and Lemons. It was called Colonization. It's here. No one will ever get this book, ever. And that was one where I literally did everything wrong. But yeah, I've always had the intention to write novels. Concision is not a word, or brevity. These are not words you can apply to me, because I just cannot shut up when I'm writing. Short stories are like a great way for me to practice with concepts and writing techniques, because you know, you're not devoting months or years of time. and yeah, you can just kind of play with that. But yeah, my intention is always to write novels. Yeah, so hopefully I will have a novel out soon that I'm not embarrassed by and delist after some bad reviews that kind of made me kind of wake up and smell the coffee a little bit, which was sometimes the best way to learn is to do it, make the mistakes, and kind of get the I don't say get the punches from some bad reviews, but then just get them and reevaluate what you're doing and learn from it.
Fair enough. What are some of the similarities and differences between publishing and marketing for a short story versus your novels or novellas?
I kind of think short stories are a little bit almost more palatable in today's world of Instagram, instant gratification. A short story is very kind of more easily digestible to our attention span starved audience that we have to deal with, because everyone wants everything now, overdone quick. But they're also really good at being like feeders into your work, so people can download a short story. It's not a big commitment to them. They don't have to commit to reading a book over a month or a week, literally over a couple of lunch times. They can be like, oh, I quite like this author. I'm now going to explore their other work. So yeah, that's my kind of thoughts on marketing short stories. Kind of good to kind of draw people in, so to speak.
So which one of your published works was your favorite to write, and which was your least favorite?
That's a bit of an unfair question, because it's like children. You can't have a favourite, but I do. Nightmare Tenant, which is my most recent proper release, shall we say, is easily my favourite at the moment. It's the highest quality work so far. I had a great outline for it, which worked really well in making the writing process really good. It's established a template for me approaching my writing going forward, which is really good. And obviously that's always evolving a little bit. The beta feedback was great, and my various ventures into marketing actually kind of worked. So I kind of feel like as a project, I learned a lot from it, and it still works as a story on its own. It's not just a total test. It actually works as a solid story. So yeah, that's my favorite at the moment. I'm looking forward to just doing better next time.
I think it's fair to say that, yeah, our favorite might be the most current one we have out, because I think as we continue to grow as writers, each story, each novel is going to be better. So it's going to be our favorite, I think, in a lot of ways. But, so when it comes to selling your work, what seems to sell better between your short stories and your novels?
I was quite pleased with the reception to Nightmare Tenant, because it worked it was kind of like half and half. As a novella, it was between a novel and a short story. It did start as a short story, but as we said, I don't know brevity. I just got to stop writing. So I was quite pleased with the figures I got from that at the end of the day. I don't think at the moment I have enough work on there to really sort of compare apples to apples with short stories. But I think having some short stories on there is just great to kind of draw people in. You can charge a sort of nominal fee. It's not a big commitment. If you're on Kindle Unlimited, they're free anyway, and it allows people to kind of take a punt on you. And sometimes the best readers come from the people that just took a chance and found they enjoyed it.
Shifting focus right now, you have a beautiful looking website. Did you design it yourself? Did you hire somebody? And if you did hire somebody, how much of your own creative influences were you able to sort of guide them?
I did it all by myself, fun enough. So thank you for the compliment on my website. I put a lot of work into it. Thank you.
I design mine too.
Me too.
Oh dear, no. Too many places to spin there. So at the end of kind of 2020 with my website, I kind of realised I wasn't liking where it was going, because it was like a blog with a bit of author stuff on the side. So I kind of switched it to being an author website with a bit of a blog still there, but not perhaps as emphasised. And I went for a kind of clean, less is more look. I think it's very easy for people to kind of go down the MySpace kind of route of putting everything, flashing animations on the website. I kind of think less is more, and I'm the brand, which is why I had to change the kind of branding on the website, and made a focus of that. So I kind of feel this is good for authors to have some fundamental skills in not just writing, but graphic design, so like Photoshop, stuff like that. It just saves you having to always contract that out. So don't be scared to learn a little bit of these things, like the fundamentals, so you can make a little banner or whatever. It doesn't have to be overly elaborate. But yeah, that was a big focus towards the end of 2020, is just sorting out the website in preparation for what was to come. And yeah, I'm really pleased that people have said, "Oh, Richard, who designed your website? You know, and I want to hire them." Yeah, no, I just think that was my kind of goal with that one.
Nice. So you have a lot of good reviews on Nightmare Tenant on Amazon. So could you tell us about the process of finding reviewers for your book?
Yes, I am very, very annoying. I have to be prepared to kind of pester people. So I just say, "Oh, you posted that review yet?" You know, again, like I said earlier, I'm not afraid to send like an ebook out to an account on Instagram that says they want to do it. That's really good. You know, the cost of an ebook is quite cheap. You can kind of absorb that. And if it gets a review or gets you exposure, you never know what's going to happen. I've had people who've commented on those posts and said, "Oh, I'd like to read this book." And I said, "Yeah, okay, DM me. I'll get your email address and then take it from there." In my newsletter, I tend to have fairly frequent and repeated calls to action for people to leave reviews. I try to make it as easy as possible for people to leave reviews, because I think the more clicks and the more exploring your website people have to do, the more people are going to be like, "You know what, I'm lazy. I can't bother with this." So I put literal hard links straight to the review thing, which is really good. In terms of like before and after the launch, I'm quite lucky to be a member of a few very nice online communities, and they quite happily added some reviews, and I quite happily feature the reviews in my newsletter in a nice little sort of graphic format, which is always fun to do. Kind of nice for people to read my newsletter and think, "Oh, whose review is going to be in there today?" Which is really good. The giveaway I did was kind of nice for the half birthday for Nightmare Tenant, because I actually got some organic reviews from people who downloaded it for free, which I think was amazing, because that's like gold dust. Really valuable to have some real reader reviews that aren't just my friends. In the future, I'm looking to get my ARCs out a lot earlier. I think I'm going to be looking at Story Origin for that. I think, Shannon, you've done some really good Story Origin videos. I'm going to be rewatching those with my notepad, which is really good. I think also you need to have realistic expectations and be aware that if you give your book to 50 people, 5 of them might review it. And be prepared for that percentage to be quite low, and you have to kind of factor that in. And it also might be helpful to explain to people they don't have to write a 4-page review outlining every kind of plot line. Even a 2-line review saying, "I like the book because of this, this, and this," is fine. Something is better than nothing with a review. So if it's 2 lines, that's fine.
Yes. So yeah, I looked at my review rates. I think it was like 24% of the people I asked to leave a review left a review. So they definitely, you have to be realistic about how many people are actually going to be able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So with part of your fan base being in the US, and I know you're from the UK, and that's how you designed your blurb and everything like that. Did you ever have any concerns about the language nuances, especially like on your blurb? I think it says the word "flat" for apartment. And did you ever consider other Amazon markets besides the UK for some of your translations of your phrases and language?
First of all, it's nice to know I've got a fan base in the US. It's good to know. I have to kind of leverage that more often. I kind of make no apologies for my work being British. I'm British. I'm proud of that. It's perhaps my primary market, because a lot of the kind of settings that I kind of bring in are familiar to British people. But I do think that the core story translates to viewers outside of the UK, so in the US, it still kind of works. That said, I'm not above writing work set in the US in the future. Like my novel, The Thaw, is set in the US, so I've had to kind of adapt my kind of vocabulary a little bit, kind of cover up my Britishness. Got to call things faucets and not taps. And remember, you have sidewalks and not pavements. So
I think you can say people understand a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's that kind of very slight language difference. I know a couple of like American friends have perhaps stumbled a little bit, but it hasn't impacted their enjoyment of the story. They kind of translate it in their head and as it were. So that's fine.
We mentioned a lot about your newsletter, but is there anything else that's really helped you find an audience? Or if it is your newsletter, how did you really grow that newsletter?
Yeah. Yeah, so my newsletter last year has been a big focus since I had this kind of like epiphany where I thought the newsletter is how you get to people. I haven't really maintained my social media perhaps as assiduously as I could and should have done. I think, again, when you have many platforms, it can be difficult. So I've got a Facebook page that I sometimes remember to post to. Instagram, funnily enough, is one I'm most active on, which surprised even me. Twitter, I don't really emphasize that, so that's kind of like where I just randomly tweet things or complain to companies who have wronged me. But I got the most success in growing my newsletter in August when I finally did a week-long advert and doubled my subscribers. Because before then it was mainly people in the communities I knew, and I finally did an advert for people totally new to me, which was really exciting. And the reason I did it then was I finally had a reader magnet ready. I finally had the prequel to Nightmare Tenant Foundations ready, and I had something to give. I kind of think if you're going to ask people for their email address, you need to have something to give. I know a friend of mine, Gary Thomas, he did a newsletter, he still does it, where he gives out a PDF, and he did an advert, and he got several hundred kind of responses. I haven't quite had that success. I'm not quite sure what he spent. But yeah, I think when you have a newsletter and you want to grow it through advertising, you need to have like a little carrot to dangle in front of people's eyes, you know, and as terrible as that sounds. So I finally had something at that time to pitch to people. So if you sign up to a newsletter, get this. This year, I kind of want to expand my use of Story Origin, largely based on Shannon's experience with Story Origin. It's a really great tool to grow my newsletter further. I want to use a proper reader magnet feature to streamline that process, because at the moment it could be streamlined, but I was kind of hedging my bets a little bit. But now I feel comfortable to actually pay up and get it.
All right, so I just subscribed to your newsletter, so I'll be interested to see what you have on there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But I wanted to ask, what do you think makes a good newsletter?
Yes, so I can say from experience, I've had some really bad newsletters. I'm obviously not going to name who they are, but I've had some newsletters that are literally just copied and pasted text from blog posts that they just sort of sent out, and it's like, no, this is not for me. So my kind of approach is to have a structured format. I try to make it personal to the reader. So when I write the newsletter, I imagine I'm writing it to one person. So when I'm writing my next newsletter, I'm going to be imagining I'm writing to Morgan Lee. Let's tell Morgan Lee what I've been doing. It's really good. And I try to keep the selling there, like here's my stuff, because that's the point, it's marketing. But I don't want it to be a really hard sell that, you know, it's really blatant. Because if a newsletter is just about selling, I mean, I've had these before, you're not interested in that. No one wants to just get adverts or junk mail. And especially considering with an email newsletter, you have pretty privileged and intimate access to someone's email inbox. And, you know, we've got to be careful of that. We've got to be obviously respectful of that. So I always try to add like a personal update and a book recommendation. So at the bottom of my newsletter is always an author highlight. So if I've read a nice self-published book, it'll go in the bottom of my newsletter because I like to pay it forward a little bit. And, you know, it's not just all about me. But also I've got to have those calls to action as well. Make sure it does kind of tick off those boxes. So yeah, that's kind of my tips. I think a good book for newsletter is to read The Newsletter Ninja and get some good tips about how to set up a newsletter and how to kind of grow it. And that's a really good resource going forwards.
I've heard about that book before, The Newsletter Ninja, and I heard it's really good. I haven't got it yet, but hearing you say something about it, it sounds like something I need to go ahead and get so I can figure out my newsletters as well.
The Facebook group for Newsletter Ninja is really good as well because you can just ask questions. And the author of the book is quite active in there, and the community in there is quite good about if you have specific questions about how your newsletter works. So I would definitely recommend it. A lot of people have been recommending it to me before I even bought it. I bought it quite late last year. I was like, oh, well, you've been doing most of this, but it's definitely worth just having it as a resource next to you.
Oh, that's good to know about the Facebook group.
Mm-hmm.
So you check that out. So you've talked a little bit about a novel you're working on now for possible publication this year.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit about what that's about and what's next in your writing?
So I have literally yesterday just started the first book in a planned 3-book series, and it's like a cyberpunk corporate warfare adventure series called Price War. The first book, I'm hoping to have it out in May 2022, so I better pull my finger out. I'm also about to pitch my post-apocalyptic science fiction novel, The Thought Agents, at long last, hooray. I'm really looking forward to both of these things happening, and there's plenty of news in my newsletter coming up with those things going ahead, so that's going to be really exciting. I'm really excited to build on what happened last year, be a bit more prolific, and then just get more work out there. So I'm really excited.
Yay. So that was all of our questions. Thank you so much. Now, if you can please tell our listeners where they can find you online and where they can purchase your books.
Yes, certainly. So I am online as Facebook. I'm Richard Holliday Author. On Twitter and Instagram, we've got to think about this. It's RJP Holliday with 2 L's. If you go onto there, you'll find links to my link tree, which has all my other various links. And if you go onto my newsletter, I'm at richardholliday.co.uk. Go there, all the links are there. You'll find links to the books, newsletter, social media. It's all there, and you can find me. So I look forward to hearing from people. I'm always open to be contacted. Just feel free to chat. And yeah, just thanks for having me on this great show. It was good fun. And yeah, hope some of the things I've said help people.
Yeah, it was our pleasure.
Yes, definitely.
Yes, it was great having you.
Yes. So thank you again for joining us. Thank you so much to our listeners and viewers. February 15th, we will have Caitlin Young on the show, a professed Buffy the Vampire Slayer superfan and author of 2 vampire books. And that is all for this episode. Thank you, everyone, for joining us again, and goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.